those are left for us by the Lord of Thunder. When it rains, he drops the things in the field so we can find them and put them in the altar. Okay, so I said, no. There is a mouth that is washing off when it rains. But who am I to tell them that is not true? No one. Why? Because that's cultural heritage also. That is a living culture. He believes that the Lord of Thunder is living that for him, so that's true. But I knew what was going on. I think I knew. But no. So you will encounter adventure in the next 8 months. Because each object that you see there has a story behind. It was used by a person. It was consecrated. All depends on the use and function. It was dedicated ritually, or it was used for the house or cooking or any kind of domestic use. It could be. The stela are commemoration monuments that tell dates and the official story of the rulers and the main characters of the cities. But when you see portable art, the little figurines and the little objects that are portable, those are the ones that are going to reflect daily life. So just pay attention when you go and see people, because the little people that you will see there were really characters of Maya society. What they were wearing, how they were using their clothes. They were not naked only in a loincloth. They had extraordinary textiles, woven in the way of a net, with little beads hanging around. They had fringes. They had capes made of feathers, colored feathers. They had cotton. They had translucent fabrics. And there are even mural paintings that show women with very transparent dresses. And a lot of beautiful fashion that can compare with us, and we say, oh, the Mayas were really an extraordinary culture that achieved all ways of development, not only in writing and the construction of cities and adapting to the environment, but in some cases they adapted the terrain in order to settle down. And that was the more difficult part. The easy part was ornamenting themselves, dressing themselves, what they were eating. And I think the adventure thing is going there and breathe the environment and hear the sounds, because the sounds were recorded to be able to reflect the environment and to please the senses of the viewer. So I think it is a very good resource that about music and about sound. Nothing of the music has been recreated and recreated just for the sake of having it there. They were recorded in real events. If there was a fair, or if there was the recorder was there in the middle of the people, so you will feel that, and that's exciting. And I think, as Nikolai and Janet say, the living Maya are still there, and although they have new values, a new religion, the other religion on the other, the past and always enduring beliefs that they still have are a way of the syncretism that Guatemala has today with the old ways of perceiving nature and the new ways of religion. So I think it's a wonderful exhibition to look at.
so there's a number of folks in here that we call rovers. So they won't be officially giving formalized tours, but will be roving through the galleries. So my next question is around, if you can give me a highlight, because we don't have all day, unfortunately. It would be nice to be able to have all day. Nikolai, if you could give me a highlight of one or two pieces that are worthy of note, that the people in this room may enter into a conversation with other people to talk about that piece.
Yeah, well, let me start with one highlight piece, which, of course, is a hieroglyphic inscription. I like hieroglyphs very much, but this is really extraordinary. It's a panel which we call the Canquen panel number 1. And it is actually from the Ruta Foundation under the custody of Sophia. And this is a panel of 160 glyphs, hieroglyphs, which are arranged in rows and in columns. And it's a piece where you can explain, where you could explain how Maya hieroglyphic writing functions, that every hieroglyph, every square, every of these signs, I will show it to you upstairs, is a word. And all of these 160 hieroglyphs together form several sentences, and therefore are a text which we can read. We can read like any Egyptian inscription or Sumerian or any inscription from other ancient civilizations. Now we can translate them, we can pronounce these glyphs in Mayan language, we can translate them, and they tell the story of the city of Canquen. Not all of the city, of course. It's a story of several kings, and in particular one of the last kings, Taht-Chanakh, and he lived in 795. This was when the panel was commissioned, and he records the deeds and the achievements of his ancestors on this panel.
Give another one. Do you have another one?
Well, I have many. For me, the problem really, I really fall in love with every single piece. Let me think. Why don't you go ahead and then I think about another highlight. Why don't you go with you?
Okay, okay. Obviously, I will follow the title of the exhibition, The Jaguar Rises. There is a spectacular sculpture of a man dressed with a mask made of jaguar skin, and he is wearing a short skirt made also of jaguar pelt. It is made of stucco, it's not stone, and is a large, it's almost 3 meters long, and it is not, there are still no comparable object that can relate to him or compare to him. This is very important because it shows an early classic. We're talking about 250 or 300 AD, the style of the object, and it has its original colors. So the skin is reddish, the jaguar pelt skirt is black and yellow, and he has ornaments in white that we can relate to little shells or bracelets made of little shells as the ones that some contemporary indigenous dancers still use to make noise. But the thing is that this sculpture has all the characteristics and all the iconography, or all the characteristics, visual characteristics of the early classic, and we can compare with characters that have been dancing or are dressed with jaguar costumes in other vases and in other kinds of material. In this case, this sculpture was found fortuitously in a cattle ranch in Petén, in the lowlands, by a group of men who were excavating to make a water hole for cattle. They had already leveled a mound that was close by. They leveled it already for some time before. And when they were excavating for the water hole, they hit the knee. Okay, that was fortuitous. But what happened next? They get excited. Of course, they were in an area where looting has been taking place. And they excavate and clean everything up. And they take photographs of that object. That I was able to go to do some detective work, and I was able to retrieve those photographs. Why they take photographs? Because it went into the art market, unfortunately. And obviously the object is too big and they sell via photograph. The people who know how to buy obviously know how it is, and they can tell if an object is worth or not. And of course it was bought almost immediately, and for what my research was able to go all the way back, it was bought by photograph, and the people there were trying to retrieve it, and they rolled a rope around the waist and started putting it up, thinking that it was made of stone, and it was made of stucco, so it fell. It fell and it breaks, but it was almost complete. And it went into a collection for several years in the early 1990s, or late 1980s. And it never saw any light outside for public view. It was until 2013 that we were contacted by this person. He was already old, and he decided to give 50 objects of his collection to La Ruta Maya because he saw the work we were doing with exhibitions, with education and everything, 6 months before his death. So he came to us and delivered several objects. That was the largest one. It was like having a vehicle inside the area. And then he delivered several objects, little small things, medium things. There was one little dark vase, nothing, just black, ceramic little. And he said at the last moment, oh no, this brings me memories. What memories? I don't know. It was not even painted. And he died. Say, like, we don't have any like criteria to even say what was his collection all about. Beautiful objects, and we received him in that time, and it was large enough. Okay, it was already registered because he was the first person to register a collection in Guatemala. When the law of cultural heritage came out, he was the first one to run and register the collection. So for La Ruta Maya, luckily, when we received it, it was already registered because it caused a commotion. No, obviously, he was not inviting archaeologists to his house. So no one saw the object before. And when no one saw the object before, obviously the first thought is, it is a modern loot. It is newly out. And for La Ruta Maya, obviously, it was a hard situation to confront because obviously we were not responsible. But the good thing is that the registry, the National Register of Cultural Property, had all the documentation, and they say no. This was registered as the collection #1, and La Ruta Maya just received it, and everything was fine. So this sculpture, the interesting thing is not only how we interpret as a man wearing regalia made of jaguar and in a position like if he's hunting and with elements that can identify him probably doing a ritual dance that we can interpret as him as a dancer, and we can interpret also the importance of the jaguar in Maya culture. We can do that well, now or in front of the sculpture if we want, because I think it's very nice to see. But it's very important if you see interest in the people saying, how do they find this? Why there is not another similar? When I was talking to this man, and he was already very old, and I said, was there another sculpture? Because Mayas were obviously all the time building and doing in the architecture and sculpture symmetry. If there is one element here, there has to be another element here. And he said, oh, the boys were picking around and picking around, looking for the other one, but nothing was found. Okay, nothing was found. What could have happened? One of the theories is that the object was perhaps taken from another site and buried ritually in that area. That has happened before with some stelas, that they bury them ritually as if they were persons. And he had the original colors. That meant that he was not outside. He was in an interior. But that's the most we can get. To the moment, there is no way of comparing, not with material or with sites, with any other site in the Maya area. See?
Yeah. Well, I would like to add.
You're going to add one? Okay.
Just one more.
Well, because we're not going to do free, so we'll have a little time for Q&As here if people have questions. Because we're not going to be able to spend a full hour in a free kind of walk around, then I think we've got a little bit.
And just one object which I think is, might be very interesting. It's this is a stela which is standing next to the jaguar, to the great jaguar, which Sophia has described. It's a stela from the site Naranjo in northern Guatemala. It's a big site, a big Maya city. And the stela is very important, and I like it very much because it's a representation of a woman. And she's not just any woman, but she is a queen. And she was one of the most important female figures we know from Maya history. And I like the stela so much because it provides evidence that in ancient Maya civilization, women could get into very exposed positions. They could take over political power. I wouldn't say this was very regularly and that women were equally represented in Maya society. It was still very male-oriented, probably chauvinistic. But at the same time, I think that, we know that women had a lot of liberty, and they were economically independent because they had their own fields of production. They produced weaving. They produced. They went to the market and sold products at the market, and they also were part in politics. And this lady, Wakalam Chan Ahau, that's her name. You see her standing on a captive, which shows that she was not only ruling the city, but she was also a successful warlord.
Is there a name that they can remember in English for her?
Yes, you could translate her name as Lady Six Sky. Lady Six Sky.
What's the name again in Maya?
Lady Wakalam Chan Ahau.
Thank you.
Okay, so it's 2 o'clock right now. Any questions from the audience at this point in time? And let's devote like 10 minutes. So, okay, start.
Can you stand and project so that everyone can...
Yeah, I like the phrase "the great jaguar rises," and we're looking at questions about that phrase. And just wondering what are we to say about that phrase, "the great jaguar rises," and what was the role of the jaguar in Mayan society?
So, you have an opinion.
I love the phrase though.
Oh, well, so really, I think if I go back to the history of it,
And the naming of it, it was to do with, so marketing gets together and they kind of begin to think about what is an evocative title. A lot of ideas get pitched around. I remember us sitting in Spain having a big conversation one night around potential titles, and there were tons of them, and some of them were silly and some of them were quite good, but then we found that they were titles that had been used elsewhere. But the Jaguar came up as a potential, because we knew that the Jaguar sculpture was coming as a kind of a signature piece. So marketing saw that as one of their key signature iconic pieces for this exhibition. But Nikolai has a difference of opinion in that, do you want to talk about your difference? But it really, so in essence, it was chosen as an evocative title. It was then the title was taken for permission in Guatemala to say, is this all right? So the ambassador, there was a seal of approval from the Guatemalan government that this title was all right, and they would use it, and they were welcome to it. But it's not actually that accurate. Is that what I'm hearing, Nikolai?
Yeah. Well, it's not that, probably not that accurate, but I must say, well, it's a title which finds some, which is liked by the Maya. I have Maya friends, and they heard this title of the exhibition, and they immediately knew, well, it has to do with us. And the great Jaguar, they thought, well, that's probably us. It's probably our thinking, it's our religion, it's our mythology. And when the great Jaguar rises, it means Maya civilization is there again. And we are here. This is a way to interpret this title.
And another situation with the Jaguar is that the Jaguar is the most important and powerful creature in the natural and supernatural world. Mayas were extraordinary in describing their environment and giving symbolism to their environment. And obviously the Jaguar is the creature that is the most powerful in several ways. Not only being able to move from heaven to underworld during the day cycle, but also its representations as the god of the sun, the solar deity, and also an animal that can enter and likes to swim, so he was related to water and abundance and fertility, and being able not only to swim. Thanks to YouTube, we are able to see that jaguars can dive and fish underwater. I would never believe that. Mayas were depicting jaguars related to water and swimming, but until I saw a film in YouTube when they dive, I was almost petrified. They were depicting that in ceramics, and they were also using the name of the jaguar as nobility title for all the kings and princes and nobles. So the word Balam, that is jaguar, it is present as part of the nobility titles of the king. The jaguar pelt represented the starry night also, and is so soft. There are also a guide at the zoo. The jaguar pelt is one of the most soft skins that I have touched. No wonder they were using the jaguar pelt not only for its symbolism, but also to do clothing. They had these short skirts that I was talking before, long skirts. They even had some leggings, like very tight pants. And in some cases, the warriors were wearing the paws as part of their costume, with the nails on, with the paws there. masks made of jaguar skin, like this sculpture is going to show, and you will see in several vessels that appear there of sitting lords on thrones or in cushions. Those were covered with jaguar pelt because it was representing authority. So we have this multivalente creature, the jaguar, as the main animal or spirit animal companion or entity in nature and the real world.
Good title. Oh, Chris.
Would
Yes.
this a request to have questions have microphones? So that all
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, indeed. Kim is going to ask a question.
Thanks. Any of us who like chocolate owe a debt of gratitude to the Maya. What is something you would like us to emphasize about chocolate and Maya culture?
Well, we start. You can. Well, chocolate was for the Maya probably what champagne is for us today. A beverage, a beverage of luxury and of also great symbolic value. It represents participation of who drinks chocolate was part of the elite. He or she had money. Chocolate was money and wealth. And chocolate was always consumed by the Maya and mixed with maize. And we know from it was mixed with maize dough and water, but there are many different kinds of chocolate beverages. We know some of these recipes because on Maya ceramics, these cylindrical vessels, which you see in the exhibition, these cylindrical vessels have hieroglyphic texts which run around the rim, and these are dedication inscriptions, which dedicate the object and say, well, this is the object for, this is writing on the object, and then it says the object was for the beverage of chili cacao, or for sweet cacao, for honey cacao, for fermented cacao, or for sweet fermented cacao. So there are many different varieties of cacao and of tastes. Cacao was for the Maya essential from the pre-classic period, from about 1000 BC until the arrival of the Spaniards. And the word cacao is an ancient Maya word. It's exactly, you can see if you could read the hieroglyph, you would see it written with three syllables, ka-ka-wa. And the last vowel is not pronounced. It reads cacao. And we thought for a long time that this is an ancient Maya word, but actually it seems to be even older. It's not a Maya word. The Maya borrowed the word cacao from an even more ancient civilization, the Olmec civilization, which is something like the mother. It's a culture with which the Maya were in close contact, and the Olmecs were even earlier than the Maya, and they were the first ones who cultivated cacao.
It is very important to note the cacao there were huge plantations that were reported by the time of the conquest as the South Pacific coast of Guatemala and Mexico, El Soconusco, and San Felipe, Zapotitlán, those areas, in the Pacific coast of Mexico and Guatemala, and even when Moctezuma Xocoyotzin, one of the emperors of Mexico, wanted chocolate, the cacautales, or the cacao plantations of the South Pacific coast of Guatemala were the origin of the chocolate that was drinking the Aztec ruler. That is already in the time of the European contact that they reported precisely these huge plantations in the South Coast. And today, cacao is still a very important drink in Guatemala. Obviously, chocolate has made its way in because the cacao was taken to Europe and was cultivated also in Africa. The chocolate, even though the cacao is American, it produces very well in Africa, as well as the coffee. The African coffee grows very well in Mesoamerica, and Guatemala has the best coffee in the world also. But it's when you see many foods that were also transported outside of the country to the rest of the world that we know that there were Native American foods. Chocolate is one that was produced as chocolate in Europe, but we also have avocados, tomatoes, potatoes, corn. Those are some of the main foods that reach the rest of the world and have enriched the cultural, the gastronomy of the rest of the cultures. What would Italy do without tomatoes? Or Switzerland without the chocolate and maize. So we have also the cooking thing with chocolate. Chocolate is still an ingredient that is very important for many of the foods that traditionally are being consumed in the Maya area. There are some sauces for the tamales made of corn that include chocolate in it. There are also for sweets, of course, and for certain sauces for special stews, el recado. So we have the chocolate in the environment of the kitchen, but also the chocolate as the sacred drink. It is still being drunk in certain ceremonies mixed with corn gruel and in jicaras or gourds in special ceremonies. A very interesting fact that I was a witness was during my archaeological field work in the South Pacific coast. Each time we were in Tacalica, an archaeological site in South Pacific coast, each time a monument was uncovered by archaeologists, in the night, local people would arrive and do a ceremony to them, a little altar and burning copal and they would put a chocolate bar in the mouth of the sculpture recently discovered. So the next day archaeologists would go by and they will see the ceremony and the chocolate in the mouth. So that means that it's still very strong in certain areas, the idea of the sacredness of cacao. So next time you eat a bar of chocolate, just think about all the story behind it. That is fascinating.
Okay, we're almost. I'm going to take one more. It's going to be hard because it's stew and
Okay, let's do two more. So we'll do the two that have hands up. Oh no, sorry.
Did the Maya people raise any domestic animals at all in their foods and culture?
This is a very short answer. Yes, I'm very happy that this is a short answer. No. With the exception of turkeys and dogs. Well, they wouldn't raise here. They were hunting a lot of animals in the forest, but they didn't have domestic animals close to the houses. Dogs and turkeys.
And the dogs are for what?
The dogs were for hunting, and occasionally they were also eaten.
Quick question related to chocolate. Would mole, as we know it today, have originated from the Maya culture?
Yes. Mole, yes. Mole is a sauce made with chocolate, and it does relate directly with Pre-Columbian cooking.
Yeah, mole is the Aztec word for sauce.
Okay, folks. Right now we have to organize everybody. Okay, how many we got?
Well, I won't be rude here. let's thank both Sophia and Nikolai for